Can you imagine if you raised your son, you're loving him, you're protecting him, only for a court to say that you don't even have the right to know his name, not his location, not his life, just gone. Everything just erased. Welcome to modern fatherhood, where the state makes sure that dads lose by default. We're going to talk about it and more coming up on Unshakable with April Chapman. Greetings and peace, you guys. Welcome back to Unshakable with April Chapman, where we discuss all things social, cultural, political, and theological from a biblical perspective. Today, I am diving into a gut-wrenching case that ought to make every father, every mother, and every citizen pause. And it's the case of Jeff Younger. Now, I've been following this case for quite some time. It's not new news, but there are often new developments. And so I figured, why don't I just take you guys back to the beginning? Jeff Younger is a Texas father who's been in the public spotlight for years now. And it's because he's been in this ongoing custody battle involving his twin sons with his ex-wife. Now, the ex-wife decided recently, unilaterally, to transition one of the boys into a girl. But not only that, she filed a petition with the courts to change their son's name. And then she requested that the court withhold that new name from Jeff, the father. Just let that sink in for a bit. A father is banned from knowing what his own child is being called because the mama petitioned the courts to do so. This is not fiction. This is not an isolated event. This is what justice looks like when you live in a world that's upside down morally, and when the world is involved with the family court system that is actually anti-family. So, my assertion in this video is very simple. You guys, the system, it's not broken. No. The system is actually working as designed. The family court system, they're not failing. Its function is doing exactly what it was built to do, which is to strip fathers of rights, elevate mothers to like this godlike status, and enable the government overreach into the lives of private families. We're not talking about deadbeat dads here. We're actually talking about fathers who are committed. They are involved. They're protective fathers. And now they're being legally erased from their children's lives simply because the state has deemed them inconvenient. Now, what I will say is that Jeff's case seems extreme, and it is. It is very extreme, but it's only extreme in visibility. Yes, there is trauma. There is absolute bias present in this case, but the spiritual and the emotional destruction that is taking place, unfortunately, this is tragically common, but I want to talk about why are women allowed to do this? And this is the part of the content that it's going to make a lot of people uncomfortable. And it's because I'm a female. And as a female, you would assume that I would be out here advocating for the rights of women. However, because I have several friends who have been involved in the family court system, and I have seen the destruction of the family court system, I am about to say something that you're not supposed to say out loud. And it's more of a question. I want to know, why are women allowed to weaponize the court system in this manner, right? Why is a mother's unvetted feelings, why is that enough to allow a child to be medically mutilated, socially rebranded, and emotionally confused with the court's stamp of approval? Why is that happening in America? Why is that okay? Where is the justice when a man can lose custody? Not because he's being abusive or negligent of his child, but because he disagrees with an irreversible medical procedure that's being forced on his minor child. Why is this okay? I would argue that feminism has told us that, you know, women want equality, and therefore, because they want equality, we need to give in to whatever it is that they want, because if you don't, it means you're anti-woman. Well, the idea that feminism was about equality, that is a lie. It is a lie. And the reason why it's a lie, because I believe it's been a ploy to trick us into siding and agreeing with ideologies and policies that fundamentally harm the fabric of the family. And just as Satan used the woman and deceived the woman and she fell into transgression, the same thing is happening today. What I have noticed is that championing, right, the rights of women these days is now being disguised as equality. What we're seeing, though, is not equality. We're seeing immunity. Women want legal immunity from consequences. They want immunity from accountability and even basic biological sanity. It is not safe anymore because of the harmful effects of women being allowed to influence the culture in almost irreparable ways. So here's the part that really broke my heart, even though I understand why Jeff Younger feels this way. Let me show you this. I came across this tweet. I actually follow Jeff Younger. I've been following him for a little bit. I decided to cover this because I understand his pain. I understand why or how he got to this point. But because of his pain and his trauma and his betrayal, this is what I am noticing. Look at this tweet. He says, my ex-wife filed with the court to change my son's name to a fake girl's name. She asked the court to keep his proposed name secret from me. Here's the rub. Jeff goes, young men, take heed of the risk of marriage. Fathers have no rights to their children, not even to know their names. And then the subsequent tweet after this, unfortunately, Jeff is giving advice and he's telling young men, you need to avoid marriage, and you need to avoid marriage until the laws get changed. Because if you don't, this is what's going to happen to you. So Jeff is giving advice to younger men, and he's taking a very hard stance by saying, don't get married. Unless and until legal protections are restored, you don't need to get married. And like I said, because I've been following this story, I understand wholeheartedly why he feels this way and how he got here. But this is where there has to be a split in the road, and a Bible-believing Christian has to come in. A Bible-believing Christian has to come in and say, wait a minute. We don't want to be dismissive of your pain. And we don't want to act as if what you're going through is not real, and if it's not wicked, and if it's not diabolical and wrong. However, two things can be true at the same time. Many are saying that for Jeff to take such an extreme position, he's doing so from a place of bitterness, and that it comes from trauma. And listen, it does. This man has been through pure hell and back. Like I said, I've been following this story for a while. The thing about it is, during his marriage, his wife claimed to be a Christian. If you go to this post, you'll see where people were asking him, did you see any red flags? People are trying to be sensitive to his plight, but they're wanting to know, like, did you see red flags before this? Because how does a family, a husband and a wife that's married and they're Christian and they're in a church, how do they go from that to the wife wants to transition one of the twin boys and turn him into a girl? And when people asked him, were there any red flags? This man has gone on record to say that the first red flag was that when his wife decided to transition their son. He doesn't give any indication that before then that there were any signs that she would do something like this. And so as a Christian, I can have empathy for Jeff's feelings, but I can't co-sign or affirm them. Because like I said, two things can be true at the same time. The government, by way of the courts, they are absolutely wicked for allowing women to do things like this and to get away with it. Yet, marriage is still honorable and it should not be avoided because of the possibility of something like this happening. For example, I could get hit by a car, or I could live to the ripe old age of 90. Both of those things are possible. But because I believe that there are no maverick molecules, I believe that the Lord works all things for our good and his glory, even the bad things. So I can't live my life thinking that, well, I could get hit by a car, so I can't ride in cars, or I can't live recklessly to say, well, because I could possibly live to the age of 90, I don't need to take care of myself or do anything to circumvent or to pause bad behavior because I'm going to live to the ripe old age of 90. Like, none of us know what is going to happen providentially in the fullness of time. And therefore, we need to hold an equal tension that what Jeff Younger is going through is bad. We don't know how the Lord is going to use it to sanctify him and to bring glory to himself and for Jeff's good. But at the same time, we cannot advise young men to avoid marriage because it's a possibility that they might marry someone who might want to transition their child. And as a result, they need to avoid the institution altogether. Here's the deal. I know too many men they've been through the same demonic system, the family court system. Men who've lost their children, lost access to their children. They've lost their homes. They've lost their minds and their savings and their retirement and everything, all while the court smiled and just told them, well, this is the way it is. Like, you just have to deal with it. And so Jeff's situation is very extreme. And some people would say, well, because of what's happening in the family court system and what's happening with Jeff, perhaps Jeff is right. Perhaps he should be telling young men, avoid marriage until policies and laws change and there's a little bit more fairness in the family court system. Men avoid marriage. I could see someone making an argument for that, but I'll talk a little bit more about that. But the bigger picture that I want to drive home is that government is the destroyer of the family. And we know this because every time the state inserts itself into the family, dysfunction multiplies. Government doesn't fix the family. It replaces the father. It empowers manipulation. It rewards the destruction of God's design, which is marriage and family. And it rewards women to be sinful and rebellious and to burn all of that down, all for the sake of them leaning into and relying on what they want or what they believe is right. The state does not care about your child's well-being, okay? All of the child advocates through the family court system that are appointed, these people do not care about your children's well-being. They care about money and they care about control. And through the family court system, it's become the ultimate custodian of chaos, right? The family court system is now presiding over the systemic destruction of families. Women are being deceived into assisting this institution, into the presiding over of the systemic destruction of families. And I believe it is incredibly wicked. And I wish the church had more of some sort of presence or voice or advocacy for men in this area. So I just wanted to show you guys this tweet, because this is the tweet that actually inspired this show. But more important than that, I need every listener, especially the men, to hear me clearly. Men, you are not disposable. Okay, you are not optional. You are not just a paycheck or a sperm donor or the guy who cuts the grass. You are absolutely necessary. God said so. I say so. And so many women out here who appreciate the sacrifice and just the existence of who you are. You are necessary. And when a system treats you otherwise, that system is not just unjust. but that system is operating from a demonic place and it's wicked. And I wish that more churches would discuss this and advocate more for these sort of family situations, because I'm interested in actually seeing politicians take an active role in doing something about this, because there needs to be a national conversation about reforming the family court system, limiting government overreach, and protecting children from ideological and medical warfare and abuse, because this is happening a lot where women and children are being unduly influenced, and the family court system is actually using their vulnerabilities, using the fact that typically women are the ones who initiate these divorces, and then the children are caught in the crosshairs, and at the expense of wicked, evil people who don't want to see families flourish. They make it easy for the women and the children to completely bypass God's design and order and structure for the family, and completely ruin and decimate men. And what ends up happening is you end up getting men like Jeff Younger. Bless his heart. I pray for him that his heart would be softened in this area. But now the ideology is men avoid marriage because there's no protection for you. And if this happens to you, your children will be taken from you, your children will be transitioned, and you'll be left destitute, broke, busted, and disgusted. And now, the more I say it and the more I look at it, I mean, there really is no incentive for a man to get married. However, and so because I'm a Christian, I can have empathy and compassion for stories like this, but at the same time, I can't kind of co-sign and encourage men to completely avoid marriage altogether because of the possibility of something like this could happen. I'm interested in seeing a politician take an active role in doing something about this. Like, if you are a politician running for office and you add this to your policy platform where you're going to be an advocate for men's rights, I mean, if you're talking about wanting to win a demographic, you will absolutely win a demographic. We need a national conversation about reforming the family court system and limiting government overreach and protecting children from ideological and medical abuse, because this is happening and it's happening a lot. So be praying for Jeff Younger and the situation that's going on with the custody and the child, his son being transitioned to a girl. Now it's to the point he's not even allowed to know his son's new name. And so I wanted to highlight this because it speaks to the broader problem of what happens when the government is too involved in the everyday affairs of constituents, and how this is just another ploy and a trick of the enemy for the government to assert itself as God and being supreme over all, and then causing utter destruction as a result. And so if this episode spoke to you, please share it. If you've lived through this or something similar, leave me a comment below. I definitely want to hear your story. I think we should be using our voices to do what the courts refuse to do, which is to stand for truth and to stand for fathers and to stand for family. So until next time, you guys, stay bold, stand firm, and above all else, stay unshakable. Grace and peace.